So, I have several let's not meet instances, but this one is one that still bugs me sometimes. I had a traumatic experience with my birth and was dealing with PPD. So, it was about 3 years ago. My youngest was about 3 months old, almost 4 months. Now, there are two Walmarts near me, and they are both about a 15-minute drive. One is in the sketchy area, and the other one is in the nicer area. So I needed to pick up a new pump since I was breastfeeding and had just went back to work. I was in the children's area with my little one in his car seat covered by a blanket as he was sleeping. There was this old lady there looking at baby stuff. She asked me about my baby. She proceeded to tell me about her grandbabies, but how her whore of a daughter-in-law kept them away from her. By this point, my little one wakes up and I lift his blanket and start to walk away and talk to him. I go and look at some baby clothes, and this lady is right behind me, just staring at me. I felt like something was wrong, so I left the baby section and went to electronics, trying to get away from this lady. I don't see her behind me, and I just think how silly I am. I watch way too many serial killer documentaries, and I just chuckle to myself. I remember I forgot to get bags to store my milk in, and decided to go back to the baby section. It was just my little one and I in the aisle. I bent down to look for a selection of storage bags when something just felt off. There's this old lady again, trying to sneakily unbuckle my son. I told her to get the fuck away from my son. Then she proceeded to try to take the whole baby carrier with my baby in it. She was yelling how it was her right as a grandmother to get her grandchild and how this was her baby. By this point, I'm yelling like a madwoman, and here come two employees that separated us but left my child in the middle. I'm trying to get my son, and they are trying to figure out what the fuck is going on. The old lady starts telling them that I was trying to kidnap her baby. I'm in tears, and I tell them it's my baby, and show them pictures of my son and I along with the rest of the family that were on my phone. I asked to be escorted to my car, and they did, while they made the woman wait for me to be gone. She was yelling at me some crazy ass shit. I ended up sending someone else to go buy what I needed at Target. I haven't stepped foot in that Walmart again. So, crazy lady at Walmart, let's not meet. This happened a few years ago. I can't remember exactly how long. No more than 4 years. Anyway, my boyfriend and I had gone to Walmart and had been there for about 20 minutes at this point. We're in the bras section and he tells me he has to go to the restroom. He leaves for the very front of the store, while I'm in the centermost part of the store. I'm standing at the bras and I notice a large man walking toward me. Keep in mind that I am a very paranoid person and am always looking over my shoulder for multiple reasons. Well, this guy stops right next to me. Like if I lifted my elbow, I could have touched his elbow. I tell myself not to be a paranoid freak, and I go back to looking at the bras. Well, in the time it took me to look at the first guy, a different guy has ended up on the other side and is looking at bras too. Both men are on the phone. I audibly gasp, but then immediately assume they were on the phone with their women. Dumb, I know, but I didn't want to scare myself. And so I decided to give up on bras for a moment and went to look at the underwear instead. As I walked into the underwear aisle, a different man walked into the same aisle looking directly at me. He stopped at one end and I stopped in the middle, next to my size. Then, as I was about to leave the aisle from the opposite side of the third man, the first man walks into that aisle from the side I attempted exiting. He was still on the phone, but he was not speaking. It was just to his ear. Then I decided I was being paranoid and started mentally begging my boyfriend to come back already. I was just too scared to walk past either of them and couldn't find the third guy, so I just stayed still until my boyfriend was in my view again. Then I practically ran out of the aisle and told my boyfriend what happened. He was pissed and wanted to see the men, but I just wanted to leave. We paid, left, and never saw them again. Pretty sure I was almost kidnapped. So, random scary men that are bigger than me and probably wanted to kidnap me from Walmart, let's never meet again, please. Last night, I went to Walmart, and as I walked in, these two guys gave me a strange vibe. It was about 9 p.m., and the store was busy, so I shrugged it off. I was looking at candy, and one of the two men walked into the aisle, looked at me, and left. Okay, weird. I tried to shrug it off. About 3 minutes later, I was still in the same aisle, and I feel someone behind me. It was dude number 2. I got jump scared. I said, "What's up?" or something along those lines. He said, "I thought you were, work here." I said, "Well, I don't. Why were you standing so close? Get the fuck away from me." He giggled. "Oh, my bad. Don't be scared." And he walks off. I had my gym clothes on, but my shirt was a greenish blue, so I thought maybe it was still an honest mistake. I continued shopping. I get out of the original aisle I was in, and he's against the wall display of fucking tampons, just kind of standing there. We make eye contact, and he starts looking at the products. Okay, whatever, maybe he's buying for a friend. I was still spooked, so I did a sharp turn into the next aisle and started walking a little faster. For whatever reason, I stopped at the end, and he slowly approached from the opposite side. I told him, "Dude, you're fucking creepy." He said, "What if I just thought you were cute? You don't have to be all worried." He's smug and smiling. I say, "That's no way to approach anyone. You scared the fuck out of me." He went on to say, "Sometimes that's a good thing." I fired back with, "I'ma fuck you up you get close to me again." I was just scared, and I didn't know what else to say. I decided my Walmart trip was done. But I was paranoid, so I walked around random aisles for another 15 minutes. I only saw him once again. When I finally calmed down, I went to self-checkout and saw him from the corner of my eye. He was staring from a distance. Think the customer service and returns to the farthest self-checkout. Most Walmarts look the same in regards to layout. So I kept myself busy in the clearance bins they kept by the register for some time. I again calmed down and felt it was safe to proceed. I was still at self-checkout and looked up for a second, and I see him at the exit leaning against the wall. This was when I realized none of this was a coincidence, and this guy was probably up to something. For a brief second, I thought to myself, I'll just walk to my car, and if anything happens, someone will see. I saw him against the wall, and something didn't seem right. He was obviously trying to hide. I took a few steps, then I thought about the girl who got kidnapped at Target. I did a U-turn and told the door greeter, "I just said that guy's been following me, and I don't know what to do." She turned to see where he was. Again, he was standing against the wall trying to hide. He took off running. She told me to walk back to the fitting room and wait for the manager. I waited 10 minutes, and no one ever came. I was annoyed. I was scared shitless and ended up calling a friend, and he stayed on the phone with me until I got home. This morning I called the store to see if they could review the cameras. I spoke to the assistant manager, and she told me, "Well, I can assure you nothing happened." I spoke to her manager, and she was a bit more helpful. She said she would review the footage, but nothing can be done without a police report. Fair enough. I doubt she'll even watch it. Fair enough. I called the police department, and the dispatcher asked me some ridiculous questions. She asked why I didn't just call 911. I told her I was scared and not thinking straight. She didn't really care what I had to say, and I could tell she probably thought I was being overdramatic. I had a rough night, and I just wanted to write this out. I'm usually a resilient person, and don't really have anyone in real life to talk to this about. I'm new to Reddit and have been following this thread for hours. Upon reading some stories, I just so happened to remember this one event that occurred a couple months back. This isn't as scary as it is just eerie. My girlfriend works the overnight shift at Walmart. I have a regular full-time day job. Our time together can be sometimes slim, so we take opportunities where we can get them. I'm off on Saturdays, but she works, so I go up there on Saturday nights to hang out with her. Her job is pretty lax, to where I can just stand beside her all night while she stocks items. Well, one night I come to her Walmart, and she texts me, informing me that she's in the candy aisle. I go inside and walk to the very back of the store where she's at. We stand, eating candy, doing our thing. After about an hour, I see this man in a motor cart wheeling past the aisle. He catches my attention because he rides back and forth, passing our aisle, then coming back around. My girlfriend's back is to him, and she's going on a tangent about some coworker. She doesn't even notice that I'm no longer listening to her, but I'm watching the man behind her. After some time, the man disappears, and we go to the next aisle over. But then, a couple of minutes go by, and the man on the motor cart drives to the end of the aisle. My girlfriend, once again, is oblivious to what's happening, but I am on high alert at this point. I know something isn't right. He was all the way on the opposite end from us, but he stopped his cart, facing us, and just stared at me. We even made clear eye contact, but he doesn't break his stare. He's an overweight man, probably in his late 50s, mostly bald with patches of hair around his head. He's got eyes that bulge out a little bit. Definitely gives me the vibe that he's mentally impaired. I remain calm and pretend to be listening to my girlfriend, but my eyes do not leave this man. He eventually backs out of the aisle and leaves. He's gone for a few minutes and I begin to relax. My girlfriend and I get into another intense conversation when I hear the motor cart from a couple aisles away. I immediately cease the conversation and my eyes shoot down to the end of the aisle. There he is, rolling towards us. My girlfriend and I are standing on either side of the aisle. There's enough room for him to pull right in between and stop. He's so close I can hear his heavy breath. I stare at him as he stares at me, never once looking to my girlfriend. A few moments that felt like an eternity goes by, while we just stare at each other, almost waiting for the other to speak. When all of a sudden, he says, "Anna." My heart drops to the floor. That's my name. My mind is going a mile a minute. How does this man know my name? Who the fuck is this dude? I weakly mumble, "Yes." He says with the same blank expression, "Are you Anna?" I stare at him in disbelief. "Do I know you?" His face changes and he has a disturbing look in his eyes, as if I knew he fucked up. Like he regretted revealing something. "Wrong person. I'm sorry," he says before pulling away. Afterwards, my girlfriend and I just repeat, "What the fuck?" I still have no idea who that man was or how he knew my name. It's possible that it was just a coincidence, but still, it was just too weird that he located a random girl in a supermarket and actually guessed the correct name. I've never seen him again, but I've always wondered what that was. I currently live in Virginia. I moved here a year ago. I don't go out very much and fly under the radar. I have no family here. All of my family resides in my home state down south, so the fact that this man knew me by name was quite shocking, to say the least. I saw this dude lose his temper and go as psycho shitfuck crazy as anyone can go. It happened out of nowhere. I mean, this dude was arguing with his girlfriend in the Walmart parking lot beforehand, before we showed up. Anyways, that's what it looked like. We pulled in near the back of the lot, and we noticed this dude talking heatedly to his girlfriend, or a girl. I'm just assuming she and him were a thing, because there was this little girl there, a little girl standing next to her mother. And the man, the dude that goes batshit fucking crazy in about 3 minutes, is standing in his girlfriend's space and barking shit into her ears. They were standing outside a minivan that was all boxy 80s looking and rusted, and the windshield was cracked and the engine was running. And this is when I noticed the old lady, some old bitch with a cigarette hanging from her lips and a scowl scribbled across her damn face. She was just sitting in the minivan in the passenger seat, and the window was down, and the dude keeps barking into his girlfriend's ear, real close enough to her ear that if he stuck his tongue out, he'd be able to eat out her ear hole and taste her wax. My mother suggested that we park somewhere else as soon as she noticed the drama. My mother, like most people, cannot stand being around drama. I like drama. I enjoyed TV talk shows when I was younger and had the time to watch them. I like Twitter rants, Facebook drama. I dig it when I see a public freakout. At least I'm honest about this. Almost everyone says they hate drama, when deep down, further down than the pit in their stomach, they fucking love hate in action. I told my mom not to worry about it, and I put the car in park and started to open my door, when out of nowhere the girlfriend shrieks and starts pounding on the dude who was yelling in her ear. I froze and watched. She was hitting him with her fists like they were fucking hammers, and she kept screaming. The dude was covering his face, and he was yelling shit too. After what must have been only 5 seconds of flailing flip-out episode, the dude gets all wife-beater on her ass, and he lays her out. I mean, he punched her in the teeth, and she fell to the ground. This is when the old lady gets out of the minivan. "Look at what you made me do!" the dude screamed at his unconscious girlfriend, who was literally sprawled out on the ground, all miscontorted, out cold with her eyes wide open, and her teeth, the 2 front ones, they were folded back into her mouth. Some blood fizzled at her lips, and she was taking these exhausted, snore-like breaths. It makes me shiver just to think about the noise she was making. The girl's daughter immediately bent down and tended to her mother. "Wake up, Mommy," the little girl said, and she looked at the dude and she glared. The dude screamed and shook his head. He looked at the little girl and said, "What? She's still breathing?" The old lady, who had been standing in the background, and I hadn't really wondered why, in fact, she decided to step out of the ride when the girl started flipping hammer fists at her boyfriend dude. This old bitch, and she is a filthy bitch, you'll see, takes her cigarette from her lips and burns the knocked out lady's cheek. She literally just slowly reached down with her smoke in her fingertips, and she outed the cigarette on the passed out lady's face. I have never seen anything so fucked up. The old lady says, "She's really out cold. You knocked her out." The dude yelled, "Shut up, Mom!" Now, the old lady gets back into the van, only she doesn't get back into the passenger seat. She gets behind the wheel. The dude kneels next to the girl and slaps her face a few times in what appears to be him trying to wake her. She doesn't wake. The little girl screams at him, tells the motherfucker to stop slapping her mom. By this point, the old lady had backed the minivan out of the parking space. She yelled out the window, "Move out the way!" The dude looks to his mother, who is in the minivan, and he examines the situation. The situation being, the old lady has the minivan pulled out of the space and now angled at the passed out girl. So the wife-beating dude takes this all in, and he nods, like it just clicked, and he agreed with it. Gave his mother bitch the nod of approval, and the dude scoops up the little girl and backs away. The old lady slowly drives the van up on the girl. The van stops, its tire on her torso and chest with the weight of the van. The lady's eyes pop open and she starts screaming these ugly screams. The little girl bites the dude holding her. The dude drops the girl. I mean, the little girl just slumped to the ground. It wasn't just a drop. I didn't see exactly what he did as my view was obstructed. I figured it out the next few seconds when the dude kneeled down next to his screaming girlfriend, who had a goddamn minivan parked on her stomach, and this is when I realized he was holding a knife in his hand. Now I see blood spilling out of the little girl, but my eyes go back to the dude with the knife. But now all I see is his body leaned over the girl's face. But I know he has a knife, and he's screaming, and she's screaming, and I can tell just from the man's arm movements, jerky, quick strikes, lots of them, that the dude is stabbing the fuck out of his girl. "Make the bitch pay," the old lady said as the man keeps stabbing her in the throat area. Now the dude stops, gets up, and goes to the back of the minivan. The lady is no longer screaming, just bleeding out everywhere, still pressed to the ground by the minivan. Out of nowhere, I hear a loud roar, and I look from the bleeding girls on the ground to the back of the minivan, and now he's holding a live chainsaw. He seriously sprints to the front of the van back to his girlfriend with the chainsaw, and with no hesitation at all, he saws her head right off her body. This is the second most fucked up thing I have ever seen. The first most fucked up thing I've seen comes next. The little girl, who must have been stabbed in the stomach, has been on the ground bleeding everywhere. He cuts her body in half with the chainsaw. I mean, right in half. She was still able to scream, and she did that. She screamed. The head half of her body was screaming bloody murder, screaming for life, screaming for death. The dude grabbed her upper half, yanked the screaming girl's torso up, and carried this half of her body like a goddamn duffel bag, and he throws her in the back of the minivan and starts chainsawing her inside the minivan. All I can see is the man's motions. Blood can be seen dribbling from the tail end of the van. A puddle quickly forms. The fucked up thing is that my eyes glance back to the spot on the ground where the lower half of the little girl was left, and her fucking legs. I swear to Jesus, they were twitching. Not just twitching, in fact, not twitching at all. The lower portion of her body, which had been separated by a fucking chainsaw, was all alone on the ground of dirt and blood and guts, and her legs were ferociously kicking as the dude with the chainsaw was chainsawing the little girl's upper body in the back of the van. I felt sick to my stomach. I took off, drove away as fast as I could, and I sped out of the Walmart parking lot. I could hear the chainsaw in the distance, and my mother was crying. And this is when I realized that my mother was on the phone with 911. A cop SUV pulled into the parking lot as we were leaving, and by the time we got out onto the road, adrenaline making my entire body shake, a few more cop cars cruised into the Walmart parking lot. My mother told me to pull over, so I pulled the car over to the side of the road. Then she started screaming, and my mom told me to drive, so I pulled back out onto the road. I started to drive, and I couldn't stop shaking, but I kept driving down roads I haven't drove down since I was in high school, and I remember thinking how some things just never change. A white rabbit jumps in front of my car, and I accidentally run it over with a thump. I hit the brakes. My mother had her head in her hands, and I scream the loudest I've ever screamed in my entire life. I get out and crawl to the twitching bunny rabbit on the ground, and the little bunny was bloody, and the little bunny was suffering. So I broke its neck a few times, just cranking the neck in all the wrong directions, making the little dying rabbit's neck crack a few good times, and it just wouldn't stop twitching, and I just wouldn't stop shaking, and I just wouldn't stop breaking the rabbit's neck. I held on to the rabbit for a few hours, even after it died, no more twitching, and I prayed the Lord for my forgiveness, all because of a psycho motherfucker in the Walmart parking lot.